Yes, you can get a loan for farmland if you have never farmed before. And no, I did not believe this was possible either until I did it in 2023. So in this video, I'm going to go over with you guys right now, for those of you watching who want to buy farmland, buy rural land, land out in the country. You've never farmed or gardened a day in your life. You're sitting in the city right now thinking to yourself, there's no way this is a possibility for me. In this video, I'm going to break down how there is absolutely an avenue to farmland ownership, even raw land with no structures or barns on it for you. Again, my qualifications are, I know this because I just went through this process in 2023 and then had the property next to me, behind me, built out last year and now this year. Please enjoy the background noise from my 6 chickens that are not loving all of the snow on the ground right now. They are baby little divas that like to keep their little feetsies warm and dry. I don't blame them. So when it comes to buying farmland, a lot of people think that traditional lenders are your only option. And spoiler alert, if you call up a traditional lender, a bank near you, and say, hey, I need a loan for vacant farmland, they are probably not going to issue you that loan. Most banks prefer to lend to properties that already have structures, or preferably homes on the land. It's a lot less risky in their eyes. So I thought for me, when I found this land, that I was going to have to pay out of pocket for it. It's nearly 7 acres of land in upstate New York. You all know I did a simple Google search, and what I found was the farm credit system. So many people don't know that the farm credit system exists. It is separate from the USDA. So I'll talk about the USDA in a little bit. The farm credit system was created by our government over 100 years ago, believe it or not. It is no longer associated with our government. It is a co-op, a financial co-op across the country that exists to lend primarily to beginner farmers or people who want to buy vacant or rural land. They are going to be your number one go-to resource for that. Depending on where you are in the country, Farm Credit is going to have different names. So for me, being in the Northeast, it was called Farm Credit East. Wherever you guys are, you can simply go to the Farm Credit website and look up the name of the Farm Credit Bank based on where you are located. I also talk about within the farm credit system are subsystems. So in my case, the loan for my land, the umbrella is Farm Credit East, but it actually came from Country Living Loans, which is a subset of Farm Credit East that deals with smaller tracts of land or homesteaders. You won't have to know this. If you call up your local farm credit office, wherever you are thinking about buying, they will let you know what program you're going to fall into. That's not something that you're going to have to do deep research on your own, but they did let me know that that is where my loan is going to reside, because I have what is called, a small homestead. I am not commercial farming. So typically people who are doing large scale commercial farming are going to be more so involved with the bigger farm credit side of the whole system. I have covered this in other videos that I will link to below, where I go more in depth on the farm credit system. And I do write about this all the time on my Substack. I always tell you guys, I'm first and foremost a writer, so please do read along with me on my Substack. I will also link to that below, where I have broken down everything there is to know about farm credit, including the loan that I got for my land that I'm currently paying back to Farm Credit. It works like any other bank. I pay a monthly payment on the first of the month. I have an auto payment feature set up on my online banking with them, and it withdraws from my account once a month. I have a 10-year payoff structure for my land. I would obviously like to pay my land off sooner if that's a possibility, but I was ecstatic to get a loan because I would never have been able to afford some of the things you see around me or behind me out of pocket if it had not freed up capital for me. But why you're really here is understanding how I got this loan without any prior farming experience. I really did think I needed prior farming experience to get a loan for farmland. I thought the lender would want some kind of guarantee that I was going to farm this land. With Farm Credit, that's not the case. They ran my credit, they checked my bank statements, my tax returns. I went through a very normal financial approval process for a loan with them, which means they are still technically lending to me like any bank would. They don't really care what I do with this rural land. That is hack number 1 here for all of you listening in. If you don't want to provide a business plan, you have no prior farming experience, and you want to buy vacant, rural, whatever farmland, I promise you, please start with the farm credit system. If you have shot credit, we're going to get into other options here. I've also covered 20 different unconventional ways to buy farmland on my Substack. I'm going to link to that again below. I've learned a lot about this whole process, but if you don't want to provide a business plan, if you don't even want to prove for a single second you know what you're doing as a farmer, farm credit is the way to go. That is why I went with it, because I didn't really know what the heck I was doing on this land, and in some ways I still don't. So I really appreciated that I didn't need to define it. I told farm credit at the time that I was going to do microgreens farming, which I did for a year. I'm no longer doing microgreens farming for a variety of reasons I can break down in another video. It's just not for me. I don't really enjoy growing plants inside. I'd rather be outside. I love being outside. But it didn't matter for my farm credit loan. That's what's great. Nobody cares. As long as I'm paying it back, they're happy, I'm happy. Farm credit loans can vary based on where you are, from 10% to 30% down, with different payoff structures. That is going to be unique and custom to where you are. So I always say, just call them. They're not going to bite. They've been the best lender I've ever worked with. They've been very friendly, and I get to go to a yearly dinner. It was at the local fairgrounds, a yearly incredible free dinner that they put on for their borrowers. That just make it definitely feel like more of like a family, I guess, than a traditional bank. Nobody paid me to say that. If they did, I would have to disclose that below. Your next option for buying farmland with no prior farming experience is the USDA. My caveat always when you're working with the government is, do understand you're working with the government. So what that's going to mean is a slowdown in the process, a little more big brother watching, and a little more proof of what you're doing. So for many of the USDA loans, I'll put on the screen here, again, covered that before, you are going to need a little bit of a business plan or farming plan to prove to them that you're not going to misuse your governmental support or funds you are taking from them. Don't let that scare you, though. I have since learned about these farming plans or business plans. Since you are a beginner farmer, they know that about you. They're not expecting you to produce this massive, impressive, projected profit and loss statement of everything you're going to need, all the inputs you're going to need to farm. They're more so interested in the concepts or what you are going to be doing with the land. And yes, agrotourism, I looked it up, qualifies for this. So if you're planning to just simply build a barn, have some goat yoga go on in here, and then garden to your heart's content outside, that is still enough and satisfactory to them. I've read as long as you communicate, excitement and overall commitment to a plan, a vision you have, how it's going to contribute to the local community and the land, they are more than likely to go ahead with you still. So don't let that deter you. Again, you are going to have to provide some type of business plan, whereas with farm credit, you don't. And with the USDA, they actually have micro loans. That's something I've been possibly considering for any other future thing I do. I'm not there yet. The microloans are interesting to me. They're a case-by-case basis for like 40, 50K, and can absolutely be enough if you're just eyeballing 1 acre, which I do encourage people on here. You don't need dozens of acres. You don't want dozens of acres. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of work. Property taxes, all that. This idea that you need 200 acres to call yourself a farmer, I think has been detrimental to people in cities or suburban areas considering this type of lifestyle. I think it sounds overwhelming and expensive, and it is overwhelming and expensive. And like I said, I have 7 acres. I barely use 2 of them, and I'm happy to leave the other 5 wild. It's been incredible, the life and the pollinators it supported by doing that. So if you're thinking about buying land, if you get 7 acres, you really only need like 1 or 2 of them. And then you can leave the other 5 acres wild, which is much better for the environment than plowing, every inch of your 7 acres and dumping chemicals on it. I always say, I think small scale farming, small scale land stewarding is going to be the future. And the only way, I think at this point, to save what is left of the environment that we have not completely destroyed into oblivion, on a positive note. With the USDA, you do have the option of 0%, 5%, even 10% down, and they are more forgiving if you have bad credit with certain programs that they offer. Again, I'll put it on the screen here. So if you have bad credit and you're like, oh, farm credit is never going to talk to me, the USDA may absolutely be an option for you for this farmland. You just are going to have to jump through more of their hoops and provide a written business plan or some type of assurance that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And the government loves, when you do your due diligence. So if you sign up for some programs, courses, whatever that you're currently in or planning to enroll in, when you make this pitch to the USDA, you're going to sound like a better overall person to them. All the things that the government loves. I did work with the USDA. I almost went for a grant here. I ultimately decided not to. Actually, I should do a video on that. I realize I haven't. I'll do a video for that on you guys. I don't love Big Brother watching and constant oversight and control over what I'm doing. That's kind of the reason I bought this land. So at the end of the day, I didn't really go with the USDA, but I'm not going to sit here and say they're the worst of all time. I didn't have this awful experience with them. Just understand, when you work with the USDA, you're working with the government. Before I dive into the different myths that people are believing and why it's probably keeping you from buying the farmland you see behind me, I'm going to quickly talk to you guys about how I keep my hands warm and dry for my homestead chores here on my land in upstate New York. Yes, I am talking about Toolant. They make all-weather, waterproof winter gloves that are insulated. Actually, I'm going to put these on right now because my hands are freezing. And I'm going to show you guys in a minute. There are different daily things I have to do here that involve me having my hands out or possibly putting my hand in water, like checking on my different wildlife water sources or cracking my chicken's ice water. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have waterproof, proper gear. It's going to make your life a lot easier, especially as beginner homesteaders. There's going to be so many things that pop up that you don't expect or that you don't foresee. And I have found personally, it's worth its weight in gold to have the right basics, the right gear available to you when you're outside in the middle of a blizzard, making sure your animals are safe and happy. My Toolant gloves are 100% waterproof, keeping hands dry in rain, snow, and wet environments and blizzards here. They're also thermal insulated, ensuring warmth even in freezing temperatures, which it is in the single digits here as we speak. They are also touchscreen compatible, so I can actually get on my phone and do different social media things while wearing the gloves. I don't have to take them off. It's a huge help. And they're durable and flexible, making them suitable for all my farm work, taking care of my animals, and just managing my homestead in the winter, which is not necessarily the easiest season to have a homestead. We will pretty much have snow on the ground here until March, so you can bet I will be using these Toolant gloves every day till then. There's probably some myths you've been taught throughout your life about buying farmland. I was taught a few that are incorrect, and I really believe it held me back maybe a couple years from going ahead and pulling the trigger with something like this. So I'm going to debunk those because I think that's an important part of opening our mind up to the financial loan possibilities for something like this. And you guys know I push this because we are living through one of the largest wealth transfers of our lifetimes, possibly the largest. $24 trillion worth of farmland is now changing hands over the next 18 years. Aging farmers are passing on, and their heirs, or if they didn't have heirs, don't always want their land. Foreign developers, private equity firms, and solar corporations know this. We are losing a lot of our farmland. We're losing 2,000 acres of farmland per day in the U.S. Very alarming. I do believe it should be talked about more, but I'm here trying to provide you guys with a solution to buy up some of that land before these corporations do. Myth number one would be that you need to already have farm income coming in before you can get a loan for farmland. This is completely false. Like I said, with farm credit, you don't even need prior farming experience. You definitely don't need farm income coming in. You do need to prove some sort of prior income to qualify for the loan. So if you're working in an office job right now, that's enough. That is enough to qualify for these loans. You do not need to already be working with a tractor and selling produce at market. Myth number two is that you need to have prior farming experience. This whole video is me debunking that. You absolutely don't. Our government and the farm credit system are both aware that we are losing this farmland at an alarming pace, and they are willing to work with people who do not have prior farming experience. Again, with the USDA, with certain programs, you might have to provide a business outline or plan of how you do plan to generate income through your farming. With farm credit, you're not going to have to do that. The next myth is that you're going to need to start a family farm of some sort to qualify for these loans. Again, false. It is me solo homesteading here, sometimes with help from my family. I absolutely purchased this land with no plans to make it a family farm. The vision was always to make it a pollinator farm, which I'm well on my way to doing, and hosting different agro-tourism, workshop, educational types of events with a farm stand. And guess what? All of that's fine and it works. You do not have to have this big family farm that is monocropping corn to qualify for these loans. Like I said, the USDA has expanded what they're willing to accept in these business plans to agro-tourism, to goat yoga, things like that, to tours, to walking tours on your land, to demonstrations, to Airbnb and camping will even qualify for it if there's an agricultural component. So they have definitely expanded what they accept for these loans, because again, they do understand we have a situation on our hands here. I'm not saying how the government goes about things is always great or right, but the government is usually aware if we have a situation, a housing crisis, a land transfer issue going on. The government does have some sort of awareness of that. Another myth that you need to put 50% down if you're going to get a loan for raw land because it's just that risky. False. Farm credit on average does 20% down, and with the USDA, you can get 0%, 5%, or 10%, depending on their different programs. I went ahead and did 30% because I wanted to pay off my loan more quickly, but I did have the option to do 20% down on my farm credit loan. I don't know if you guys can tell from the color in the air around me, but it's gonna be 1 degree tonight here. Actually, it's gonna be the coldest anywhere on planet Earth, they said, in the Northeast and upstate New York this evening. Do with that information what you will. I'm always trying to communicate to people how freaking cold it is here, and it's in the single digits right now. But I always say, you know, I was born in upstate New York. I would say I was born to freeze to death here, and I gladly will until the end of my days. Last myth is that only beginner farmers get approved for these programs. If you are somebody who has tried your hand at farming or agricultural activities in the past, maybe you failed, maybe you didn't, they're not as interested in you. That is completely false from both the Farm Credit and the USDA. These guys are just running their businesses as usual. In the case of the USDA, they want to issue a certain amount of loans to make it look good on paper. In the case of Farm Credit, they are running an actual financial co-op, so it benefits them to bring more people into the fold. They want more people to borrow from them. They want more people to pursue their different loans for undeveloped land. So the idea that you need to be this brand spanking new farmer or even young is a complete lie, and I just want to make sure people are aware of that. If you're sitting there thinking about doing this, maybe you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s and you think, oh, it's too late for me, that ship sailed. It's just not true. I've had so many people in their 60s actually come to my farm stand. I've talked with them in Vermont, New Hampshire, and they're solo homesteading for the first time in their lives. And I think that's really amazing, and I think a lot of people kind of get in their heads when they get older that they just can't handle something like this. If you're worried that you can't handle the physical labor of this, I'm here to tell you there are so many young people around you and in town that would want to volunteer and help you build out a homestead. I see it all the time. I think we like to think that young people don't want to do any hard work, and I really don't believe that's true. I just think we've done a bad job of connecting these two parties, and I always hope in the comment sections of my videos I provide that connection maybe between older generations that are in control of the land or about to give up the land or want to work the land, and the younger generations that are absolutely aware of what's going on and passionate about saving the environment and our food systems. Anybody out there thinking about buying raw land in 2026? If so, let me know about it below. How do you plan to buy this land? Do you have a different unconventional way? Let's get the conversation going. Sorry, a bird just came up very close to me. We feed the birds here. I love the birds, and they're definitely going to need food tonight. We are losing 2,000 acres of farmland per day in the US, so I always say there will never be a better time in your lifetime between now and the next 18 years to buy this land. Now is the time. If you are feeling the call to do this, there's a reason for that. If you found this video, there's also a reason for that. So stick around. I break down the greatest wealth transfer of our lifetimes on here, what's happening to this farmland, how to do stuff with your farmland, what I've done with my farmland, how I'm trying to help save the environment, and as you guys know, I am reporting on the land grab at the hands of solar and wind corporations that I unknowingly found myself in the middle of here. Never set out to find it, but alas, I found it. As I always say to people, I can't unknow the things I learn. Unfortunately for everyone around me, I become quite the nuisance. All right, stay warm out there. Bye.